Hey there, everybody. Just getting the meeting started. As we notice, people starting to trickle into the lobby. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for your patience. We're going to get rolling in just a couple of minutes, probably at 1 or 2 minutes past the hour, just to give any stragglers a chance to show up. But yeah, thanks again. We're really excited to know that we've actually got some bodies in the audience today. Hey there, Andres. Thanks for joining. David, welcome to the webinar. Right on. So we officially got 10 o'clock. Like I said, we're going to give it, just another minute or two for folks to trickle in. I am willing to bet that there's more than a few folks out there who haven't used Teams webinars before. So that always introduces a minute or two of setup and install. But we are, like I said, really happy to have you guys here as the early bird cohort. Hey, Caitlin, thanks for joining. Okay, 10:01. I think we'll get started on the intros. I'm sure we'll have a couple extra folks trickling over the next minute or two, but I will say thank you one more time for jumping on with us today. I am Cody Pearson of Hubcap Solutions, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Eric Postma from Measured Digital. And today we're going to talk to you about how tech transforms traditional marketing, kind of an introduction to the strategy and the practical application of revenue operations. So RevOps. And don't worry, we're going to start off by defining exactly what that means. So that'll come in just a second. But start off by doing a couple of quick introductions. So I am Cody Pearson, and I am one half of a local HubSpot support firm called Hubcap Solutions. The other half is Lisa Latour, who is actually manning the chat here today. And I'm a Tech Manitoba member. I have been for about a year and a half now. You might have seen me do one or two tech mashups. I also run the Western Canada HubSpot user group. So if we do have any HubSpot users out there today, in my follow-up, I will include an invitation, just in case you haven't got enough of me on today's presentation. So long story short, I've been doing HubSpot, for about 7 years. And HubSpot is, if you're not familiar with it as a platform, it really is a revenue operations piece of technology. And we're going to look at it a little bit later on in the session today, just for some examples of how revenue operations kind of walks itself out in your tech stack. But That is me, and I will hand the mic over to Eric Postma so he can give you a little rundown on who he is and why he's the other half of the dynamic duo today.
Thanks, Cody. Yeah, I'm Eric Postma, the founder and consultant of Measure Digital, 100% of Measure Digital, which is just me at this point in time. And really, what I focus on is what I call digital experience strategy. So it's making sure that businesses of all sizes really understand how to best use all of the different digital marketing and sales tools that they have at their fingertips, and making sure that they best reflect your business and your brand. So I work with small, medium, and large businesses and really work to optimize everything from paid advertising to email campaigns to websites to revenue operations, which is why we are here today. And so with that, I'm gonna jump right in to
Actually,
what we want to be
Eric,
talking
I'll
about
give
today.
you
Oh yeah,
just
go ahead,
one. I'll
Cody.
cut you off real
Yeah,
quick, just so keep for folks. We have the Q&A and we do have the chat.
yeah.
If anything pops up, anything you want us to clarify, any questions you have about the lines of conversation, feel free pop in the chat or the Q&A. Lisa will be keeping an eye on things throughout the entire session, and Eric and I will be alternating back and forth between our sessions. We are going to plan to stop for questions at the end of Eric's session, so at about the halfway mark, and then there will be a little time for Q&A at the end. So if anything pops into your mind, just throw it in the chat and we'll address it ASAP. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Cody. Yep, good reminder. So today, really what we want to be talking about is, I'm going to consider a big part of this is an introduction to RevOps. It's a hot term in some circles, but a lot of people maybe don't know what RevOps or revenue operations is yet. So we're going to talk a bit about what it is and how it integrates into your current sales, marketing, and operations. Really want to make sure that you understand how RevOps can improve outcomes for your business. But I'm going to emphasize a lot, most importantly, from my perspective, how it improves outcomes for your customers as well. And then Cody is going to talk a bit about how you build a successful RevOps function and just some ways that RevOps sort of comes to life with people, processes, and technology. So I'm going to start off with what is RevOps. Hopefully we get on the same page here. So RevOps, it's the alignment of sales, marketing, and customer success. Really what we're trying to do is deliver an improved customer experience. And from a business perspective, our goal is to boost revenue growth. So essentially, RevOps function is the operating system for modern revenue teams. In simple terms, it's like the glue that holds together sales, marketing, and customer success. And what I mean by customer success is the people that ultimately deliver the products or services to your customers. So it binds all of these teams together, ensures that these teams are working in sync and seamlessly kind of coordinating across the customer journey, data flow, revenue processes. There might be some terms that I throw in here too that are a bit unknown or that you might not know, and so hopefully as we go through this, it'll kind of come together a bit. So we start by thinking about different stages that we might take a prospect, lead, or customer as they interact with our business, right? Starting out as an unknown audience, we maybe use terms like marketing qualified lead or sales qualified lead. They, configure or they get a quote, they make an order, they get billed, the product or service is delivered. We provide post purchase support. So this is kind of a way that we think about that customer and all the different ways that they're going to interact with our organization. And typically, we kind of silo different parts of it into different teams, right? Marketing is responsible for lead generation. Sales is responsible for, taking those leads and getting them to the point where they're ordered. Customer success handles billing and finance and delivery and support. And so each department typically has their own objectives, their own budgets, their own strategies, their own teams. But from a customer's perspective, all of their experiences are with your company, right? They don't see the differences, they don't see the silos. And so, rather intuitively, RevOps is this strategy that unites these teams with unified goals, unified processes to try to think about this entire experience more cohesively. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how RevOps improves the efficiency and effectiveness of your sales and marketing and customer success, right? How do we make revenue generating more efficient and more effective? Typically, without this unified approach to revenue operations, you often see lost revenue, you often see longer sales cycles, you often see lower win rates. However, a key element that I'm going to strongly emphasize is the outcomes of adopting RevOps strategies are not just those internal things, not just efficiency and effective metrics, but we often see significantly improved outcomes for your customers, your leads, your prospects, because they are treated to a more unified experience. And we're going to paint the picture of what this means moving forward here as well. So in order to really understand how RevOps improves outcomes for your customers, I'm going to step way back and work to understand the customer journey. So this might be something that you might be a bit more familiar with, sometimes known as the buyer's journey, the customer's journey. Sometimes we see it as a funnel, sometimes we see it as a flywheel, but it's essentially what are those kind of core decision stages that a customer might make, and a lot of it is not necessarily conscious, but different things that need to be understood or learned as they think about a purchase. So it takes us through awareness, consideration, decision, and then kind of the product or service experience. So at the awareness stage, a buyer is experiencing a problem or they see an opportunity and they're trying to understand that problem or that opportunity, right? They're trying to put a name to the problem. An analogy that I often use when talking about this is when you're sick. And I mean, if you guys are like my community here in Winnipeg right now, I feel like half of the people I know right now are fighting something. But right now, you might have some symptoms, right? You might have sore throat, a runny nose, a headache. You've got some problems, but you don't know what to call those yet. So you might, take a COVID test, for example, or go to the doctor or something. They're going to do some assessments and they're going to help you put a name to that problem, right? And so you talk to your doctor and they say, it's the flu, right? Flu's going around. There's a lot of people that have it right now. This just looks like a virus and it's likely the flu. So now you are in that consideration stage, right? You've got a name to the problem and you're looking for different solution strategies. So you talk to the doctor and he says, well, there's some options, right? The best thing is go home, rest, lots of fluids, some chicken soup, like in a day or two, you're going to start feeling better. That's option one. Option two, you can go to the pharmacy. You can buy some over-the-counter medication, right? This cold or flu medication. It's going to help ease your symptoms, but it doesn't solve the root of the problem. And then option three, maybe the doctor's like, hey, I've got this friend. He's a faith healer, and he can pray over you, and miraculously you're going to be healed, right? And so you've got these three potential strategies you can take, and you think, well, I can't just go home and rest. I've got this really important presentation I've got to do at work, or I'm not much of a believer. I don't think that faith route is going to work for me. I'm going to go to the pharmacy and I'm going to take some medication so I can feel better and get through this presentation that I have today at work. So now you've got a solution strategy and you're in the decision phase. Right now you are evaluating potential vendors, determining final purchase, right? And that could be based on, you go to the pharmacy and they've got the wall of boxes, all the different colors and brands and name brands. And your ultimate decision could be based on, perceived effectiveness, brand affinity. They've got the, natural or organic stuff there. And ultimately you choose, the Tylenol variety because you have an affinity to that brand or it was on sale or something like that. So you've chosen that. And then ultimately your experience is that post-purchase experience, right? You evaluate the product or service against your expected outcomes. I expected this to make me feel better so that I could get through my presentation today. Did it actually do that? And that informs referrals. It informs future purchase of it as well. So understanding that journey that the customer might go through as they are kind of evaluating whatever it is that your business might sell really helps us understand how a unified approach to marketing, sales, and success, customer success, can deliver improved outcomes to your customer. And we'll go through that a little bit more in the future, but really I want to step back again to this idea of RevOps, and I'm calling this the RevOps vision. Like what can RevOps do and what can it achieve for your business? And so there's often this laundry list of things, and these are the details we're going to get into today as well, right? Typically when we have a unified approach to our customer and to our revenue operations teams, we see organizational alignment, right? We're rallying around common goals. We see improved efficiency and effectiveness of our sales teams teams because of this more unified approach to revenue generating metrics rather than just siloed approaches. We see better prospecting, targeting, retention because we all have a unified view of who the customer is and who our ideal leads are. Sales performance and forecasting is typically heightened, right? What we do is with visibility into our data and into our performance, we all have a shared view of sales performance. Often we can see new sales revenue from existing databases as well. So, marketing doesn't end at the lead, sales doesn't end at the close. All of this together is we can see and leverage our data in a bit better way. And finally, you'll hear me say this term a few times, but this idea of a single source of truth, right? With technology, we can have one view of our entire pipeline, all of our customers, all of our leads, and that single source of truth allows all of these teams to report on something collectively and understand what success is. So the ways that vision comes to life is primarily, through three things that we're going to talk about today. So number one is that vision comes to life with our metrics being aligned with revenue. What that means is instead of vanity metrics like website traffic or clicks or social engagement or even marketing qualified leads, what we can do is we can replace those with revenue qualified success metrics like number of quotes that have gone out, value of the sales, lifetime value of these customers and these leads. And that allows us to better align all of our metrics for all of our teams against truly, business important metrics. Number two is sharing KPIs across teams ensures that we're all working towards the same goals. So I've been in situations in the past where marketing is responsible for increasing leads, but without necessarily understanding the quality of those leads, right? We can sure lever up newsletter signups, but that doesn't actually lead to a sales outcome in the next quarter. And so shared KPIs allow us to work together to kind of common higher quality objectives across all these teams. Shared accountability as well. When we do have the single source of truth and we're contributing to shared goals, it ensures that all teams are accountable for revenue goals and work together more effectively. And then finally, that transparency with technology, that single source of truth allows us to have a unified view of the customer so that we can all kind of look and see how a customer has engaged with our company through time, as well as those real-time metrics allow us to make adjustments based on current pipeline health. And what I mean by that is, we can adjust rather than being surprised by missing revenue targets or sales targets. We can adjust much earlier with improvements to our quoting process, improvements to our lead conversion, improvements to our marketing efforts as well, to make adjustments before we see kind of revenue problems at the end. So what is included in RevOps? Some of the things we're going to talk about more today, there's typically three high-level pillars that we focus on. One, people. So things like just the alignment and the people work in aligning marketing, sales, and operations, aligning these people around the common vision and that common goal. We talk a lot of the times about, what training we need to do, right? Marketing needs to start understanding terms like qualified leads and quotes and all of that work. Leadership is really important. Cody's going to talk about visionary and the role of the visionary and how important that is, as well as communication between these teams. From a process perspective, when we truly adopt like RevOps strategies, we are standardizing workflows across all of these teams, right? We're focusing on achieving standardization and efficiencies all the way from initial touch points to, after the purchase has been made, reducing bottlenecks, enhancing scalability, increasing knowledge, all of that kind of stuff from a process perspective. And then technology. I mean, we're here partly today because of Tech Week Manitoba. So, of course, we'd want to talk about technology, and that's something both Cody and I love to talk about. But this idea of how a single source of truth, how a common technology across these teams helps support and enable teams to improve their knowledge of their customer, improve pipeline performance, and ultimately enable RevOps. So in this section, I'm going to describe just some of the ways in which RevOps strategies can transform your organization. Later in the presentation, Cody's going to go a little bit more into detail and showcase, even with some software demos and examples, how RevOps can transform your organization. But this is really just at high level. I want to talk about some of the expected outcomes that you would see when you embrace RevOps thinking. So first is this idea of marketing and sales attribution. So what this means is really understanding what is leading to marketing success, sales success, and making decisions based on that information. Ideally, we want to be connecting our marketing efforts to revenue and prove our return on investment, right? This allows us to optimize our spend efforts on tactics that are delivering revenue. Earlier, I had mentioned kind of vanity metrics. There's plenty of clients that I've worked with where, we don't have revenue data connected to something like our marketing performance metrics, right? We might be reporting on engagement rate on a website. Maybe we can get conversions, right? Or some sort of key event on a website. But rare is it that we're able to make decisions based on the actual revenue tied back to marketing sources or website sources here as well. This allows us to adjust campaigns, refine messaging, improve conversion rates based on sales success rather than just vanity metrics. Again, we might easily be able to lever up leads if we focus on higher kind of in the funnel leads like newsletter signups, but ultimately what we're trying to do is lever up our revenue. And so we need to focus on the sources and the outcomes that are actually leading to revenue. This allows us to optimize our spend and our effort and use that attribution for improved decision making. On the sales front, so this is a screenshot from like a HubSpot contact record. On the sales front, we can adjust our efforts based on the journey that a prospect has seen, right? So we can see what content have they engaged with, where did they submit their form, how did they first come to our website as well. So with visibility into all of those marketing touch points, we can improve our sales conversations, right? We know now that this lead has had this content delivered to them, or they've watched this video. And so therefore, the questions we ask in that sales conversation is affected by the previous knowledge that they might have from those other touch points. We might also adjust our approach to our leads based on the fact that they came in via a newsletter subscription or they came in via a trade show. So all of those different sources, the content they've consumed, ultimately informs the conversation that the sales team might have and allow us to focus on the higher value lead sources. RevOps also, we see improved lead and deal management. It's improved with data and automation tools. So we can personalize messaging. We can meet customers based on where they're at in the journey. So imagine, somebody at the awareness versus the decision stage, are they trying to better understand their problem, or are they evaluating our product against the competitor? We need to meet them and deliver information to them based on where they're at. We can't go to somebody at the awareness stage and start doing product comparisons, us versus the competitors, right? That's a mismatch of information at that point. We're also able to do lead scoring and lead qualification. This allows us to prioritize high intent prospects based on their engagement with our website or potentially unique demographic attributes. Cody's going to get into more detail on that shortly. The handoff between marketing and sales is improved, right? You can imagine if we're all having a unified approach, we've done the work to build out a consistent unified process between teams and departments. We don't lose emails, right? If we've got a CRM that's handing these things off for us, we don't have missing to-do lists. We have clear ownership of different prospects at different stages of the journey. And then automated nurturing as well. We're able to use workflows to automatically kind of engage with leads at the right time with the right content, taking care of some of the grunt work involved with nurturing and engaging with leads. I don't know if grunt work is the right term. Sometimes we enjoy that work as well. But what does is automation just enables our marketing and sales teams to be more consistent with our prospects and customers. So with improved knowledge of your pipeline, one key outcome is confidence. With confidence, you can reliably scale up or down based on your desire for growth and your capacity to take on more business. So you may have kind of seen this or heard of the 4 stages of competence before. And so really this idea that sometimes there's the idea of unconscious incompetence. I don't know, and I'm also not good. I'm unaware of what makes me bad, but I'm also bad. Conscious incompetence, I might be aware of what I need to learn, but I haven't quite learned it yet. Conscious competence, I know what I need to do to be successful, and I am successful as a result of that. And to me, with RevOps, that's the goal there. In this model, unconscious competence, so sometimes it's not thought of in this way. Performing the skill becomes automatic. I don't have to think about this thing. So you think about a professional athlete and how expertly Connor McDavid shoots a puck into the top corner of a net. He doesn't have to think about that. It's just automatic. Sometimes we also think about it here as unconscious competence is there are some of those people that are just so good at what they do, natural ability or natural talent. I've seen this with salespeople in the past that I've worked with, that they're just naturally good at what they do. But if you ask them what makes them good, they don't know. They couldn't break that down. So in my mind, with RevOps, we're trying to achieve that conscious competence, right? We're trying to achieve that we know what is going to make us successful, so that what we can do is be confident in our ability to scale up our revenue operations as required. So what we can do that with that confidence and that reliability, we can, have clear attribution. We can deliver smarter investments, right? We know what channels drive revenue. We can optimize spend with confidence. We're forecasting with data and predicting future revenue based on real pipeline insights. We've got leads right now. We know that's going to result in X number of revenue in 3 months. We're able to competently eliminate bottlenecks, identify and fix any friction points in the funnel before they impact growth. So we see a drop in conversion rates or we see a drop in lead generation. We can address that ahead of time before it's a revenue problem. And then ultimately, confidence, scalability allows us a more consistent flow of leads, right? A well-structured pipeline ensures that steady demand, predictable conversion rates. We see seasonal dips, and we know at that time we need to fill it up with other potential sources, right? Technology is a big part of it. And really what that delivers is this idea of the single source of truth, right? Sales, marketing, leadership, they access real-time insights. And with that data and visibility, you achieve transparency into the entire marketing and sales process. We have that shared view of leads, deals, pipeline, and revenue. This enables the handoff between departments, clearly defining ownership and next steps. With improved pipeline visibility, everyone understands the current and forecasted pipeline health, so we can understand and make business decisions based on the future forecast. Performance tracking at each stage helps us address potential roadblocks, bottlenecks, or issues before they become a major issue. What if you were able to avoid a sudden drop off in revenue by addressing the change in conversion rate or the MQL volume ahead of time? And then transparency ultimately leads to accountability and collaboration, right? With a unified view of the pipeline, helps the team rally behind current concerns to bring forward a unified fix. So I've talked a lot about efficiencies and effectiveness and scaling up and data and all that kind of stuff. But again, I want to kind of end my section here off with this idea of the seamless customer experience, right? How revenue operations delivers better outcomes for your customer. Really that consistent on-brand messaging throughout the experience, from first touch, the first visit to the website or first view of an ad, all the way through to close and product or service kind of support. Ensures that messages aren't duplicated. The customer is treated to a unified experience they deserve. We've thought a lot about our brand messaging, and we want to make sure that's reflected across all of these touch points. The second one too is personalized engagement, right? This allows you to meet the customer on their terms using the power of technology and automation. So instead of having to duplicate efforts, asking questions over again at each touch point, we've captured information. We know what the user and how they've engaged with us. We're able to meet them on their terms and deliver a more meaningful experience in those conversations. And then finally, that transition between teams is frictionless, right? The customer is treated to a truly cohesive experience. From your own experience as a customer, how often have you talked to a sales reps only to have to, talk to an account manager later once you've made the purchase to bring them up to speed, right? Shouldn't you know this? I already told this person. As a customer, I want the whole organization to be able to best understand my needs and not have to kind of bring everybody else up to speed across the board. So with that, I'm going to end the high-level strategy stuff, and Cody's going to talk shortly about kind of all of the details about how we build the successful RevOps function. But I'm going to pause here. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can address them at this point. Otherwise, if there aren't any urgent questions right now, then we can address some at the end, at the close as well. So save your questions for the end or pop them in the chat right now.
Totally. And what I'll do is, yeah, we've got nothing. So you've been 100% clear to 100% of the audience, which is always the dream, Eric. And we're going to pivot, and I'm going to talk about, I'll get my share going in just a second. I'm going to be talking about two main thrusts. The first is going to be what a revenue operations team looks like. The second is going to be how technology and kind of specific apps and considerations actually go into building a revenue operations tech stack. But to give folks some time to write up questions if they have them, I do want to, draft off of Eric's high level thinking, talk about two things. The first is revenue operations, the title. This is a funny thing. This happens in business where concepts that have been around for a long time get rebranded as something new and sexier. So for years, this RevOps was mostly just called like sales and marketing alignment. That was a thing that you would be always pushing towards, is having your sales and marketing teams or your sales and your customer service teams more aligned. So revenue operations and people operations, pay operations, all these ops branded thought processes are really just iterations on stuff that we've all been trying to do for years. So one of the reasons we wanted to do this presentation was to kind of get that out there. Is like, hey, it's an old idea with a new spin. Also, there's two halves to that term: revenue and operations. And the truth is like everybody wants the revenue part of that title. And what I'm going to spend basically the next hour talking about is how important the operations half of that term is. Like without the operations, you don't get the revenue. And the operations is the detail-oriented part that requires strategy and consistent effort. And that also flows into something that, like, in businesses, sales and marketing have always kind of been the awkward parts of the business. They're the parts that, maybe they work, maybe they don't, but we never really know why, at least in, smaller or mid-size organizations. We're always kind of struggling with, like, how should marketing be working? How should the sales team be operating? What should that relationship look like? And a lot of times we don't have those same problems in other parts of our business. Like we all kind of know how the accounting team should work, or we all know how human resources should work, because these are functions that come with a defined operating procedure. Like when you hire a CPA, they know what accounting should be. When you hire an HR person that's certified, they know what HR should look like. They know the regulations, they know the requirements. So these functions come with baked in operating systems, either because of regulatory or because of legal or whatever. But there's something that says this is what this needs to look like, which gives that function some structure, which is why these functions often feel more real than a sales and marketing team, which can kind of be a bit of a black box. So revenue operations really is an attempt to bring some of that structure that you might see in other functions into, the little bit more loosey-goosey world that can be sales and marketing. So those are just kind of my two kind of opinion and, thought, philosophically based insights into the world of revenue operations. So I am going to get my share going, and we're going to take a look at some of the crunchier bits that go around supporting that philosophy. Which window do I want? That's the window that I want. So, it might feel counterintuitive that in a session that's focused on how technology transformed things, I'm going to start off by talking about people. But ultimately, it's people who use technology and people who shape the technology that is going to be used. And revenue operations isn't a thing that happens on its own. Like, as Eric talked about, this spans marketing, sales, customer service, fulfillment. Like, revenue operations in its, in the Socratic ideal of it, is a full organizational push. So you do have to have a team of people working on this. And when I'm going to talk about this, it's not going to be itemizing you need certain job titles or you need to hire up X number of people, because what the specific team you're going to, that's going to work on this looks like varies a lot from organization to organization. But there are three archetypes that I've found in working with a lot of organizations that are typically present in successful revenue operations teams. There we go. So, yeah, the first one is the visionary. Now, this is the person who probably resonates most with all that stuff that Eric was just talking about. This is the person that typically they're a senior leader within the organization, either from the sales or the marketing kind of sphere, but sometimes it's the CEO or the organizational leader who wants to takes on this role. But there's somebody that knows how they want the sales and marketing function to work. They can look across and say, okay, I want my marketing to look like monthly events, followed up by, testimonials from the people who benefited from those events, followed up by, an invitation to book a demo with our salesperson. And then once they've booked that demo, I want that demo to happen within 2 days. And that demo should lead directly into, a quote. Those quotes should all have a sign-off date within 7 days, and blah, 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 blah. This is the person who can look at the entire machine and say, this is the journey that I want our customers to go on. And it's funny because this can come in kind of two forms. There's the reporting-driven visionary, and then there's the experience-driven visionary. The reporting-driven visionary is the person who sits down and says, I know, we should be closing deals within 2 weeks. We should be generating, 15 demos a month. We should have 9,000 people on our marketing list. The reporting-driven visionary, either because of an intuitive sense or previous experience, has numbers or metrics in mind that your organization should be meeting to drive that success. So they want to build a revenue operations machine so they can have a standard process which consistently hits those metrics across the team. And so they can sit down every Monday morning, look at the dashboard, see just nothing but green check boxes, and be like, we're running a good business here. I'm satisfied. And then there's the experience-driven visionary, who might not know exactly how quickly a deal should close or exactly how many leads need to come in the door every month, but they know that they want to be sending a weekly thought leadership piece out every week. And then based on anybody who, downloads the guide that we share in that thought leadership thing, those should all go to, Roy, because Roy's the guy who knows a lot about the topic we talked about last week. And so anybody who downloads the guide, they should get a personal follow-up from Roy, and Roy should offer to take them through, our software or whatever. And then after Roy's done with them, that should go over to Jake, and Jake should be, taking them on a tour. Anyway, they're the ones that know exactly what they want the experience to be. And they want the technology and the processes to support that journey. They might not care exactly how long each one of those deals stays open, but they just know this is the experience that I want to give my clients. So without a visionary, what you end up with is you end up with a marketing plan, and you end up with, sales KPIs, and you end up with a dashboard of performance metrics for your customer service reps. But marketing's accountability and responsibility ends once they've generated a lead. And then sales, their responsibility ends once they've closed a deal. Customer service, their responsibility ends as soon as they've resolved an inbound ticket. You end up with functional processes, but a lot of friction in those transitions between those two processes. So the visionary needs to take that step back, conceptualize the entire, machine, and then put the people in place to execute that. The people to execute that are the mechanic or the mechanics sometimes. These are the folks that have expertise in the platforms that you're going to be using. So for most of my clients, myself and Lisa are the mechanics because they use HubSpot. They use HubSpot as a platform. We're the experts in HubSpot. We can listen to the visionaries say, I want to hit this metric or I want to deliver this journey. And then I can say, okay, great. Your platform has these strengths, these weaknesses, and here's how we're going to balance those. Here's what the actual inputs that we need, and here's the things we need the team to do to deliver the outputs that you want. And again, depending on how many tools or how sophisticated your operation is, the mechanic, you might have one mechanic or you might have a team. They might be an external consultant, or they might be somebody on your team right now who's just like a power user of your current CRM, or is a particularly technically inclined member of your marketing team. There's a lot of different, faces that can fill that mechanic role. The job of the mechanic is to take that vision and translate it into actual operational outputs in the tools that you're going to be using. And then last, and absolutely not least, even though they almost never get enough credit, is the COP. And frankly, I know that this is actually a pilot, but it's the closest thing I could find to a COP in the Microsoft icon library. So the COP is the person who basically keeps an eye on the day-to-day operations of the tools that you're using and identifies places where people aren't doing what they need to produce those outputs. And often this is the role that's not in place. And it's why a lot of software implementations, CRM or otherwise, happen to fail, is because in order to have a successful revenue operations output, you need consistent inputs and you need people doing the things that they're supposed to. But again, because revenue operations is a, cross-organizational pull, people are inevitably going to be focusing more on, their daily experience, doing the things that they feel that they need to do to move things forward, and maybe not as focused on the, oh yeah, I forgot to tick that tick box, in the CRM, which actually needs to happen so that the sales team knows what to do, or that actually needs to happen so we can transition that issue off to the customer service team. So you need somebody, a COP, who can keep an eye on users, keep an eye on those metrics, and flag the places where people have become deficient, and then step in, and address that. Now, I talked about your visionary, your mechanic, and your COP. You also have, as part of your RevOps organization, your users and your growth leaders. So your users, that's the easiest one. That's the marketing manager who actually sends the emails. That's the sales rep who actually manages the deals. That's the customer service agent who's actually processing those tickets. And then there's your growth leaders, your sales managers, your marketing directors, your heads of customer success. These are the people whose mandate is not necessarily the full organizational picture. Their mandate is is focusing on their team's specific output. The marketing manager will always be most focused on, outputting the number of leads that you ask them to put. The sales manager will always be most focused on hitting the quota numbers that you've given their team. The customer service rep manager will always be most focused on, time to resolve active issues or something like that. So these people are all important parts of the revenue operations machine. But the difference is that, like I said on the previous slide, they're going to be more focused on their day-to-day than they are on the entire revenue operations machine. So that's why it's important to have that visionary, that mechanic, and that cop who can who can make things better for these users and growth leads, but who can also keep an eye on the health of the entire operation rather than just the individual functions that make it up. Perfect. So then I described those three, primary stakeholders, and I'm going to do a quick run through of just kind of like what the relationships between those people should look like and how often you're likely going to need to be talking about your rev operations functions in a go forward basis. So like I said, the visionary is typically having like biweekly or more frequent meetings with the growth leads to collect and say, hey, what are you guys seeing from the marketing team? What are you guys seeing on the sales front? What are you guys seeing are pain points or points of friction or places that we're losing to our, losing clients or losing leads? And what are the problems so that the visionary can start thinking of, what are the best suggestions from the growth leads on how to resolve those issues? Or what are some issues that they're bringing up that the visionary might have seen before and needs to address in their thinking? So this relationship should be a biweekly or more frequent conversation about just kind of the overall health of, the RevOps function and ideas that we could use to make it better. The mechanic is going to be talking to the visionary to try to translate those conversations from the growth leaders into operational outputs. The mechanic is also going to be reporting back to the visionary to say, hey, yeah, I know that thing where you wanted everybody who came to the webinar, to get a Jack in the Box personally delivered to them by the CRM. And then when it popped out, it smells like roses. It's like, yeah, we don't have an integration that can actually do that. So you're going to need to rein that idea in a little bit. So the mechanic is basically hearing the ideas from the visionary, figuring out ways to translate it, and reporting back limitations that might prevent the visionary from realizing that vision in exactly the way they want to. And then the mechanic is also, like I said, they're going to be having regular conversations with the visionary, which we already talked about. They're also going to be having regular conversations with the cop to say, oh, hey, I've noticed that it's really common for people not to, tick box X, or they're not logging the quotes to the deals correctly. So the system isn't working as well as it could. And the cop can be either, passing back from their conversations with the users to be like, yeah, actually, that's not working for people because of X, Y, or Z. Or, the mechanic can be saying, hey, okay, this issue that you reported to me last week, I've actually got a fix for. Okay, let's get a session together so we can train the users on what they need to be doing to have more success with that. And then the mechanic was also going to be having conversations with those growth leaders, because the growth leaders are going to be the ones that are hearing from the team, oh man, we really hate that we have to do X, Y, or Z on a daily basis. Or man, it was a great idea, to build our quotes in HubSpot, but it has this limitation or that limitation that are preventing us from winning as many deals as we want. So they're having really high-level conversations with the visionary, but they're having kind of more day-to-day operational conversations with the cop and the growth leader. And then the cop, they're the function that's going to be talking to the users most frequently to get those pain points, to enforce those processes. They're going to be talking to the growth leaders to hear, the kind of aggregate feedback on the system and how it's operating. And both of those are also going to be reciprocal training relationships. They're going to be meeting with these two groups to train people to do things better. And then, like I said, they're going to be talking to the mechanic to figure out actual solves for some of the pain points that you're hearing from the users and the growth leaders. So all of that is just to say that none of this is set it and forget it. There is always going to be opportunity to improve, to iterate, but that's going to take ongoing effort. And it's why you really need to define who those people that are part of your RevOps team are, because without that, you're going to end up with, a lot of decisions that don't get made because there's nobody specific to make them. Last, on the people side of things, is a few, slide this out of the way, a few like high-level thoughts. So the first is people on your RevOps team can wear multiple hats. Like your growth leader on the sales side might be your visionary. That might be your VP sales who's really championing this initiative, or your director of marketing. And the same thing with your COP. Like, unless you're a larger organization, you probably don't have a dedicated, process administrator who's going to spend their entire day just overseeing, people's processes within the CRM. So it's totally fine if that's like, heck, that might be an admin assistant who spends a couple hours a day filling that COP role. That might just be a carve out that your marketing director does because they're the ones that's closest to the system. You might have a couple of COPs, each responsible for different sections of the team. But the important thing is that you have that role defined. It's like you have a responsibility, to push this forward. Like I said, your visionary is likely a senior leader within your organization. That's just the nature of things, whether it be because of experience and having done it previously, whether it be because they are far back enough from the day-to-day operations that they can visualize the entire process. But it is becoming more and more common to outsource this to a fractional RevOps consultant. Like, there are folks out there. Eric is definitely somebody who wears that hat, at least part of his working life, that are that fresh set of eyes to come in and say, hey, I see that you have these disjointed processes and systems. Let's undertake a project to bring some consistent vision to that process. The more tools you use, the more mechanics you'll likely have. Again, if you're using Salesforce and HubSpot and MailChimp and SurveyMonkey and Apollo and Intercom and PandaDoc, like you're probably not going to find one brain that knows all of those in depth enough. So you're probably going to have a couple different mechanics. Some of them are going to be in-house because they're people that are familiar with your systems or the tools that you've been using for a long time. Some of them might be part-time resources that you bring in just whatever you need to spin up a new MailChimp template or something like that. But you're probably going to have some combination of in-house mechanics and outsourced mechanics working on that. And then last, your COP should be a member of your team. This is just speaking from personal experience. Lisa and I, we have tried to be the COP in organizations, and we just find it's a lot easier to ignore me, who is not working for your company and doesn't sign your paychecks, than it is to ignore somebody who's actually, in that organizational hierarchy and has some impact on when you're going to get that next raise and how much it's going to be. So we find that your COP should definitely be somebody that's on the team. Or if they're not, you definitely have to make it clear to the team that they've been empowered with this authority, so that when when I tell them, hey, you've got to do thing X, Y, or Z, the team actually listens. So that is the people side of RevOps. And I think I might have seen, did I see something in the chat?
There is a question, but I don't think it was related specifically to that, Cody. So we could talk about that question now or save it for the end.
Yeah, let's address it now, just to get some, help me break up my flow for a couple minutes, and then we'll dive into the full technology side of things. Perfect.
So
remember, go ahead.
I can go through it, but the question was essentially, and you guys might see it in the chat, a company where referrals bring the highest ROI, and I think that's not unique to your company. Typically, referrals are one of the strongest ROI kind of sources. So this kind of idea of the cohesive strategy across marketing, sales, and customer success makes a lot of sense, right? So is there a way to build out our sales and marketing to better support or predict or bring reliability and confidence to that idea, right? If the referrals truly are the ROI. So
Absolutely.
I've got some thoughts, and Cody, I think you probably have some thoughts as well. But in my mind, like often RevOps can feel a bit like when we still think about traditional silos, it can feel a bit like whack-a-mole at times where there are areas of focus. And so in that, and what I mean by that is in a scenario like that where we know that referrals are the one of the strongest sources of revenue and ROI, then to me, a big part of where we need to focus on is that customer success piece of it, right? If we know that referrals are going to be driving our marketing and sales, then we have to work together as an organization to rally behind that customer success so they can deliver like a top-notch experience, which is going to help further fuel those referrals. So that's part one, I think, is making sure that as an organization and from a leadership perspective, that's a big focus. The other part then is from a marketing perspective or a sales perspective, there are some kind of tactics we can use to lean into the referrals a bit. So often you see things like surveys, reviews, net promoter scores, all of that kind of stuff in order to measure and leverage that experience from a marketing perspective. That can go into your marketing and sales content. So whether it's testimonials or case studies, all that kind of stuff as well, to help kind of bring that referral nature into our marketing materials. And then even going as far as things like referral bonuses, right? Like if you refer a friend or a colleague or someone or say something to them, we'll give you $100 and we'll also give your friend $100 when they come in and become a customer. So there's a lot of different tactics in that way. But to me, the place I would focus on first is in that customer experience, knowing that a successful and satisfying customer experience is ultimately going to lead to marketing. That would be the place that I would touch first. I don't know, Cody, do you have any additional thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said, everything Eric has talked about is accurate from a RevOps and technology perspective. And this goes back to that whole idea of one of the reasons why marketing and sales tend to be a little bit of black box is because there's no standardized process that you have to follow for these things. And referrals absolutely fall under that umbrella. So if you want to make referrals a more predictable and reliable part of the marketing engine or the growth engine, you have to get comfortable with building some processes along that. So from a strictly platform side of things, it's really common if you guys do use any kind of issue management or ticketing system, a Freshdesk, a Zendesk, a HubSpot service, after that ticket has closed, you do the standard NPS survey. How did we do? Or a CSAT survey, your customer satisfaction. Anybody who gives you a 9+, wait 4 hours and then send a follow-up email saying, hey, thanks for your wonderful feedback. It would be, since you've had such a great experience with us, it would be awesome if you would share somebody else who you think might benefit from our fantastic experience. And that links you to a form or whatever. Or going back to that idea of referral bonuses of, hey, we're going to advertise it as part of our marketing that if you direct customers to us, you're going to get some sort of kickback. What does that actually look like? Is that going to be, we're going to have a referral page on the website that has a form where you submit somebody's, name and then your name and then their name. Is that going to be, once they've closed a deal above X size, Y, Z, basically, if you're making a promise of we're going to give you some sort of bonus, you have to have a really clear process in place to say, okay, when has the person that has been referred crossed that threshold, and what does that kickback look like? So, or last kind of spitball thought is if you're not using a customer service type setup, but you are using a deal tracking system like Salesforce Opportunities or HubSpot Deals, just say, hey, we're going to set a task for the person who owned that deal that 4 months after that deal's close date, they're going to be directed to book a meeting with that person, with the primary decision maker on that sale, partially to say, hey, how's your experience with onboarding going? secondarily to be like, hey, if it's going great, can we have that referral? But standardizing processes like that are going to be really difficult if you don't have some sort of very defined outcomes that are going to start that referral conversation. And like I said, from those examples, that referral conversation can be more or less automated, but you really do have to, as an organization, say, we're going to get comfortable carving out the time to perform this task after X signal, and that's going to take Y person Z amount of time every week, but we think that that's going to be worthy in the ROI side of things. So I know that that's probably, it might be a little bit abstract, but I hope there was enough of a kernel in there to add some benefit for you there, Jessica. All right. That does really nicely take us into talking about technology. So I'm going to switch back to my presentation, and we're going to talk about building your RevOps engine, because this is how technology transforms traditional marketing. So let's talk tech stack. I will preface all of this by saying I am a HubSpot expert. That is, I am 100% focused on HubSpot as a platform. So as I talk about this, I'm going to reference HubSpot quite a bit. I'm going to show examples in HubSpot. I'm going to talk about things through a HubSpot lens. I am not advocating that HubSpot is the best choice for every business. There are definitely situations where it isn't, as much as I love it as a tool. What I am intending to get across is that these are the types of functions that you should be looking at. So even if you don't go with HubSpot, you're still going to want whatever tools or technology you use to have the ability to score leads. You're going to want it to have the ability to send marketing email. So again, just take any time I say HubSpot, feel free to insert your preferred platform, and know that there are other options out there. So that's my biased disclaimer. So your RevOps tech stack. This little grid that I've got here, honestly, numbers 1 and 2, like almost everybody has a CRM of some point. At this point, most of us have some sort of marketing automation engine. They've showing here Salesforce Marketing Cloud, HubSpot, Marketo. This can also include MailChimp, Constant Contact, SendGrid, things like that. It's very common for there to be some sort of CRM, which is your master database, and then some sort of marketing automation platform in the tech stack. Before that as well, you'll then get into, even as to augment that, you can end up with a chatbot, like a survey platform, a whole bunch of other things that bolt into your marketing automation platform. But most of us have some sort of marketing tool and some sort of CRM. And then if you do manage customer success in an actual platform, you'll often end up with a, like a Freshdesk or a Zendesk or something like that to actually manage those customer, outcomes. The rest of this stuff, account-based marketing, revenue enablement, CPQ and billing, contact data, rev intelligence, data analytics, blah, 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 blah. These are mostly just there to show that that core tech stack can, if you really lean into revenue operations as a function, can definitely extend way further. You can have that billing platform or your, configuration and quoting engine tying back into the CRM and being part of that RevOps tech stack. So this can be really big, but it doesn't have to. Like a natural instinct for people is to say that there is some sort of perfect combination of tools out there that is going to drive these outcomes in exactly the way that I want them to. That's my first point, is the perfect tool doesn't exist. Every platform you choose will be limited in some way, excel in another way, and have quirks that can make it a pain in the ass to use. That's just the nature of marketing and sales technology. Even if you build it yourself, now you're saddling yourself with the whole maintenance and updating of that tool, which comes with its own headaches. So the perfect tool doesn't exist, but it doesn't need to be perfect to be better than it is now. Like if you are not doing any structured referrals, referral requests, but you then figure out some narrow scenario where you're like, hey, if a deal worth more than $10,000 closes in less than 2 weeks, let's ask that person for a referral. And that might be 10% of your total pipeline. But by making that step to make it 10% better, you're taking a step on your RevOps journey. So again, a system doesn't have to be perfect to be better than it is now. And then last but not least, your technology matters less than your willingness to fully embrace it. This is a thing that I see a lot with HubSpot, where somebody has come from Salesforce or they've come from a custom application, and it's like, hey, I know HubSpot likes to do it this way, but we don't want to do it that way. So convert HubSpot to do it the way that we want to do it. And then you end up fighting your own tools to try to get the outputs that you want. Whereas if you were willing to kind of say, all right, this platform is going to involve some compromises, but we understand that and we're willing to make those compromises to have less friction in the process of using that tool, that goes a long way. So, just accept the fact perfection doesn't exist, but if you just lean into taking advantage of what's out there, you're going to get yourself further with less friction. Now, integrations. There were a lot of tools in that grid, and you're probably going to want to use more than one of them. So I'm going to take you guys through some integration considerations. And this is, I'm going to talk, this is going to have a bit of a negative slant to it, but I don't intend it to. What I'm going to say is that integrations are an important part of any revenue operations function. But you want to be deliberate with them, because there is the temptation to have your core systems, like let's say we got Salesforce and HubSpot, we've got those integrated, the sales teams in Salesforce because they've been using it for years. We decide to bring on HubSpot because we know we need a marketing platform, so we're going to integrate these two, and they're going to talk back and forth. Amazing. But then you're like, okay, well, HubSpot's going to have to connect to the website, so we're going to have to integrate WordPress. And we've got a chatbot on the site, so we're going to put intercom in, and that's going to go into HubSpot. And then we have to do surveys, so we're going to have SurveyMonkey, so that's going to go into HubSpot, and all that data is going to end up, also going into Salesforce. The sales team can see it, and then the sales team is there using Apollo to do prospecting and pull a bunch of bulk contact information into Salesforce. Oh, and we're going to want to push that across to HubSpot so that the marketing team can send some follow-up emails. Oh, and by the way, we're going to want to integrate PandaDoc because that's where people are going to sign their quotes. And we want to make sure that when those quotes are signed in Salesforce, that triggers the welcome email inside HubSpot. Super reasonable. Like, I have seen many companies that use this exact same, network of applications. But the important thing is that each one of these arrows involves a compromise. You are never going to get perfect information going back and forth between all of these systems. So for every one of these little arrows, there's the chance for more friction and more friction in your process and more mess in your data. You're going to have to make some sort of compromise in your process or in the type of data or in the triggers that you're using or something and something and something. So integrations are not just upsides. Integrations do have potential downsides. And it's important to be aware of that when you're choosing to put them in place. And the reason I pick this particular universe of applications is because literally everything that I'm showing on this screen, including the sales function of Salesforce, can be done inside HubSpot. I'm sure it can also be done inside Salesforce as well through its App Exchange. Anyway, all of these functions exist inside HubSpot. Is the chatbot as good as Intercom? No. Is the website builder as good as WordPress? No. Is the prospecting tool as good as Apollo? No. But they are 80% as good as all of these other dedicated applications. So that's what I mean by your technology matters less than your willingness to fully embrace it. When you're building your tech stack, asking yourself, can the tools we have do some approximation of what we need to do? And does it, do we need the extra 10% of functionality that using a dedicated app would bring? Or are we willing to sacrifice that one sexy feature that we might use in order to spare ourselves from having to make and maintain an integration? Because these transitions are where friction comes into the revenue operations pipeline. Oh, why didn't this one lead sync over to Salesforce correctly? Why didn't that one prospect that I added from Apollo, transition from Apollo to Salesforce to HubSpot correctly so that they showed up on our marketing list? Your mechanic will spend a great deal of their time troubleshooting these points within the process. So again, just be aware of that. Make them deliberately, and don't shy away from them. So then, where does RevOps start? For most people, if you're looking at it in the holistic sales to marketing to service type of thing, revenue operations starts on your website. And I'm actually just going to hop over and I'm going to look at HubSpot. Actually, sorry, I want to do this. And again, I'm not saying HubSpot because HubSpot is the best website on the world. I'm saying because we know that HubSpot uses its own tools. So HubSpot has a chatbot where we're asking, where they ask you, hey, do you want to talk to sales? Do you want to book the demo? Do you want to get started free? So this is a chatbot, which we know is directly integrated into HubSpot's revenue operations process. When you request a demo, this form goes directly into HubSpot's HubSpot environment. I guarantee that they have routing based on which company are you in, how big is your company, that's going to steer you to regional sales reps or regional teams that can then work on your on that potential prospect. Under their resources side of things, under their blogs, they've got the sign up. It's like they put out a ton of content, and if you want to subscribe to the various content, great. Submit, boom, you're going to end up on that subscriber list again inside HubSpot, where they're going to manage those newsletters and send those out. And then I know, obviously, that they have tracking code on this website, which is connected to all of those actions that people are taking as they interact with it, so that they can get into scoring you to say, oh, this person has requested a demo and they're in this country and their company has more than 1,000 employees and they've looked at 100 blogs, they've downloaded 3 resources. Okay, how are we going to prioritize follow-up for that person, so that we're focusing our efforts on our highest value leads. And that comes into this idea of evaluating your leads. Like, again, going back to the idea of we're looking to build an operational process, which means we have to take out, to some extent anyway, we have to take out the human discretion and human work that typically, when you're not using a RevOps framework, goes into evaluating a lead. In most traditional organizations, something comes in the door, and then we send that notification to, hey, somebody submitted the sales, the request, the contact us form, and that's going to notify sales at companyabc.com. And then somebody, maybe it's the director of sales, maybe it's a sales admin, maybe it's just whichever sales rep looks at it first, is going to look at that inbound request, and then they're going to use probably their gut, maybe a little bit of LinkedIn research to say, yeah, that's a good one. I'll take it. I'll follow up with that person. But if you have enough leads, and that's fine if you just have 1 or 2 leads coming in a week, and people have the capacity to do it. But if you want to scale, you want to be arming that sales rep or arming that marketing person with a little bit more information about who that person was, how well they're likely to fit with your product, and what they've done to get them to the point of actually submitting that form. So that's where lead scoring comes in. So what I've got here is, this is not prescriptive. This is just an example of, hey, anybody who's in the C-level or the VP, when they submit that form, should get 13 points. FinTech is our best industry. We're going to give you plus 20 points. Managers and operations, that's 6 points. Company revenue, 50 to 250 million, that's 8. This is essentially forcing you to sit down and figure out your ideal customer profile. And then, as part of the operations, to ensure that you're asking those questions consistently when you're interacting with people or when people are converting with you. Because if you decide, hey, the most important thing to decide the most important thing we need to know to figure out if somebody is a good fit for us is what industry they're in, and you're not asking prospects what industry they're in when they submit a form, you're missing a huge opportunity to figure out how those people actually, how good those form submissions are. Even just by adding, even if you didn't go to a full lead scoring setup, if you just asked, what industry are you in, when somebody's submitting a contact form, that's immediately going to give your sales and marketing team a better understanding. Now, if the marketing team is going to nurture that, and they know that they're not in fintech, or they know that they're in aerospace, then cool. Then we aren't going to send them our case study on, a fintech company. But we know if they are in fintech, oh, sweet, we have a ton of awesome content that's specific to that industry because we know we do really well there. So your sales team is going to be able to prioritize based on the quality of those leads. Your marketing team is going to be able to change their behavior or build different journeys based on that information. So each individual piece of information gives you that power, but taken together in a lead scoring model allows you to really start to change how you interact with those folks, which this is where it comes to. So if we were going to say, hey, if somebody's got a 50 plus in their behavior score and their demographic score, that's that's boom, that's immediately to sales. That's a Slack notification to the sales channel. That's an email with a red exclamation point saying, hey, Jim, we got a live one. Boom, get to work. Oh, here's some that are a good fit based on some of that scoring, but they're not maybe 100% ready. So maybe these folks go into an automated sequence that sends a 3-touch email saying, hey, here's a case study. Hey, here's my meeting link if you want to book some time to talk with me. Hey, here we've got a 10% off promo going on this spring. Let me know if you want to take advantage of it. Down here, oh, yeah, they're not quite even ready to put on sales' radar yet, but maybe they just submitted the newsletter form, or maybe they're in a country that we don't really do business in, but we're still going to throw them on the monthly newsletter list so that they kind of stay on our radar, and maybe they're going to share or become an advocate for us or something like that. And then, oh, somebody from a country we don't work with a job title of student showed up. Okay, we can just delete those people, from the database because we're never going to actually action them. So that idea of evaluating your leads by having RevOps plugged into your website and being able to evaluate people on what they've told you and what they've done all walks through to setting up an operational process which spans marketing for those people who maybe aren't ready to buy quite yet, and sales for those people that are super ready to buy right now, and most importantly, for those people that are somewhere in that mushy middle. We don't have enough to say what exactly they're going to do, but we know we've got enough that we want to do something with them. Now, I'm also going to jump back. I'm going to do it this way. Like in HubSpot, like in actual applications, the way that walks out is usually we start by working with a spreadsheet where, kind of like I had on the slide, we just list the things that matter to us. And then we start saying, how much should these things be worth? And then we just build that out within the system. So right here, I have HubSpot's fit score lead scoring set up. So job title contains any of, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm going to score those individually. So CEOs are 20 points, VPs are 10 points, managers are 5 points. But if you're the manager of sales or the director of marketing, you can get multiplied criteria, so you get multiple points. Students, we don't want to deal with students. They get a minus 20 points. Somebody who's interested in commercial service is more valuable to you than somebody that's interested in residential service. You know, the country, hey, we love people in Canada, buy Canadian plus 20. Oh, you're American, boo, boo, no tariffs for you. So all of this, the important thing is that you can't do this unless you're asking people this. So this is where the operations side comes in. Is like I said, if you want to score, make this a key part of your scoring, you got to be asking people their job title on forms. You know, you've got to recognize that if you get a list from a conference that doesn't include job title and you import that into the system, you know, you're not going to get a full lead scoring picture out of that data because you don't have what you need to flesh out that picture completely, which is not a problem. It's just something that you have to be aware of and factor into your processes. And then on the other side of this is the engagement score. So this is where you're going to start saying, okay, if they've submitted the contact us form, that's 50 points. But if they've submitted the newsletter form, that's 10 points. If they've submitted the join us for a webinar form, that's 25 points. Every time they click a link in one of our emails, let's give them 2 points. Every time they visit the pricing page, let's give them 5 points. So you're building up a picture of who they are based on what you know about them and what they've done based on what they're doing on your website and how they're interacting with it. So taken together, you might have somebody that all you've got is an email address, but they've submitted 5 forms, they've seen 100 blogs, they've been on your pricing page 19 times. So that might be, you might say, yep, if they have an engagement score of 75 or more, even if we don't know a lot about them, I still want to put them into a general nurturing program. Or you might say, nope, before I have my sales team engage with somebody, I need to know a couple of questions, a couple of key pieces of information, what country they're in, what's their industry. So that all becomes those needs, generating the information you need to take the next step becomes the focus of your revenue operations undertaking. You know, if you know you've got somebody that has really high engagement, but you don't know enough about them demographically to assess whether they're a fit, that follow-up action that marketing is going to take should be focused on encouraging that person to do something to flesh out the demographic score, you know? So I won't go too any deep because I could spend hours talking about this one, but that's basically when I talk about plugging it into your website, it's not just so that your team can see those form submissions in HubSpot rather than seeing those form submissions in WordPress. It's about translating those meaningful interactions into something that you can assess people's intentions based on. And then all this boils down to being basically a funnel of funnels. So this is called life cycle stages. It's one model for plotting somebody's kind of high-level buyer's journey. So the idea is that somebody just, you know, submits a random form. You don't know much about them yet. They're just a lead. As you learn more information about them, they become a marketing qualified lead. Once you've got enough to send them over to sales, they're a sales qualified lead. Once you've got a deal in place with them, they become an opportunity, and then, hey, then they're a customer. But each one of these stages is a process on your RevOps journey. So again, I'm going to jump over to HubSpot. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at my sales dashboard in HubSpot. And I have a lead call assigned to me called Amazing Prospect at Great Company. And so what would have happened is this person would have completed the marketing qualified lead stage of their journey, which means the marketing team thinks it's ready for me, the salesperson, to work on. So they're going to create a lead to indicate, hey, Cody, it's now on your plate. Work them through this process. And that's going to involve me sending communication to, assess how the person's fit. And it's going to involve me moving them forward through these stages of being a sales qualified lead. I'm going to attempt to contact them. I'm going to connect with them. After that connection, I'm going to be forced to make a decision of are they qualified or are they disqualified. I'm going to say qualified, boom. And that's going to force me to create a deal, which I'm then going to follow through my deal stages. So it's a separate pipeline for folks who have reached the deal stage than it is for the folks that are stuck at the lead or they're still at the lead stage. And the idea is that now we have the metrics to say we've been attempting to contact this person for 9 weeks. That's too long. Hey, Cody, you got to make a decision. Is this person officially disqualified, at which point just put it out of its misery? Or is there a legitimate reason why we're waiting? Like maybe the person said, oh, I'm going to be in, Thailand for the next 2 months. And then it's like, oh, okay, that's an explanation for why you've been attempting to contact this person for 9 weeks. But without that explanation, disqualified. And the person who's having this conversation about, hey, Cody, you've got a deal that's been stuck in contacting or attempting for 9 weeks, that's the cop. That's the cop who's keeping an eye on those high-level deal metrics, high-level lead metrics, and talking to your users about, why did this thing stop? Oh, that's really common? Okay, maybe we need to look at some sort of feature where we have a new stage, which is like waiting or paused or something to accommodate, those folks, that there might be a legitimate reason why the process is taking a long time. So it's about setting up your tools to reflect those mini journeys that are happening at each stage in the process. So again, I know I've thrown a ton at you guys, so I'm going to boil it down for the last couple minutes here, which is, so you decided that RevOps is an interesting thought experiment and you want to see about where you get started. There's really two, lanes to push down. The first one is quick wins. You don't need necessarily to decide you want to transform your entire business to start benefiting from revenue operations. This could be you identify a specific use case and you just look at your tools and figure out a process for it. Who gets notified when a demo is requested? Is it always going to be one sales rep who handles all your demos? Are you going to branch that based on industry? Are you going to branch that based on company size? Are you going to branch that based on region? Yeah, let's make sure we start asking who those demos, or let's make sure we start asking the questions we need so we can route those demos accordingly. Try new features of tools you already have. You're thinking about a chatbot, you already use HubSpot. Instead of immediately going to Intercom, check out HubSpot's chatbot. Decide, yeah, let's try launching that on our pricing page for a day or for for a period of time to see whether that fits what we want to do. Build useful reports with the data you have on hand. It's not going to be perfect, but if you start trying to answer some questions with your own data, you're going to find the places where you don't have enough information to answer your own questions. At which point you might say, ooh, yeah, I don't actually know how long what our average deal size is, because we don't actually make the sales people type in how much revenue they think this deal is going to be worth. Oh, okay. Let's change the process so that moving forward, we're going to get that information from the sales team. So these are ways where you can basically take little off-the-shelf pain points from around your business right now and try to start applying some RevOps thinking to them. And frankly, this is where I excel. I'm good at taking individual questions, working them through from a technical perspective to help you get closer to actual outputs. But you can also go the full business transformation route, which is we know that what we have isn't working and we want to change it. So there typically starts with figuring out whether you have a RevOps team individually. Does your internal team have the capacity for a business transformation? Do you have somebody that can fill that visionary role, that can lay it out? Because if you don't, it's going to be really hard to transform your business if you don't have a brain that knows what that business should look like or what that business process should look like. If you're not the organizational leader, you're definitely going to have to start getting buy-in from the leaders, from those organizational leaders. They got the business to where they are today, so maybe they are fully on board with transforming it to take it to the next level, or maybe that's going to take a little bit of a sales job. And this is just a really nuts and bolts one. Figure out the renewal date of your current CRM platform or other big tools. Like, again, a platform change is often a catalyst for some of these discussions. So if you know that you've only got 2 weeks before you're going to re-up for Salesforce for the next 3-year contract, well, then you're probably sticking with Salesforce. Or you're, trying to transform your entire business in 2 weeks. So there are like real, platform and contract specific, decision points, which can, determine whether or not you're going to do this the big way or whether you're going to focus more on quick wins with what you already have. And then last, definitely, talk to Eric, because he, as you might have picked up from him taking the kind of bigger picture side of things, that's where he excels. So I see we've started to lose some folks from the audience because they felt we were winding down, but that is the end today. We are right on time, but Eric and I are happy to hang around for a couple extra minutes if there are any questions floating around out there.
Cool. Thanks, Cody. And let me say thanks to everybody for attending today as well. It was great to have you on board. And yeah, if there are questions, put them in the chat, or our emails are listed right there. Feel free to reach out to either of us if you do have kind of some follow-up questions about this presentation or anything related to RevOps.
Cool. Oh. All right. Well, I'll wait until exactly 11:30, and then I will shut us down. You're welcome, Andrew. Thanks for coming out. All right, that's that. Thanks again for your time, guys. Talk soon.